Okay. Hi, my name's Mitch. Welcome back. It's been a while. Um, I've been meaning to make a video like this for ages. I've gotten better since I've been meaning to make this video, but it's been on the back burner. And I was like, no, you know what? Let me start finally by making something. Um, so yeah, what I'm going to show you, this isn't entirely what we're going to make now. This is going to be available on the Patreon. It's not entirely finished, but I'm quite happy with what it is. It's a fucking cool effect to play with. So it's almost, this is like a, I want to say almost like a paintable reaction diffusion kind of thing. Completely accidental, but it just looks so stellar. And I think on a stage, you could map this to like a MIDI or like a controller and have a lot of fun playing with it live. I'm planning to put this onto my Touch OSC. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick. But yeah, I'm planning to put this on my Touch OSC. And fuck around with this a bit in live. So yeah, today we're just gonna do the I'm just gonna start a new project. The basics of, let me just close you. The basics of reaction diffusion. That's also probably a bit weird. The basics of reaction diffusion, how it works. Well, I'm not gonna say how it works, how I understand it. And some of the fun stuff that I've just kind of been experimenting with. We'll do like some more of the more experimental stuff. Sorry. We'll do some more of the experimental stuff towards the end. But yeah, so the how I like to start is just by grabbing a stage image. So I'm just gonna go with this one as always, this glorious boy. So grabbing a stage image, one that you're planning to use, or one that you're comfortable with using, that you kind of understand, like what you're doing with it. Christ. So what I like to do is just take this straight into feedback. From the feedback, we're going to add a blur. And then if you go into the palette, so if your palette's not open, that button there opens the palette. You want to go to image filters and sharpen. And literally all that really triggers a reaction diffusion in Touchdesigner is blur and sharpen. And you play with those to your heart's content. So sharpen starts at 0.5. I like to just push it to 1 straight from the beginning. So the sharpen amount, you'll see it sharpens this like, so the blur creates these, if I up the blur, these like artifacting on the image. And by playing with this, you add more artifacting, and by sharpening the artifacting, you see you get like more edges from it. This is just how the terminology that my brain uses works. I could be very wrong. So the most common that I use is a composite, because you can play around with different blending modes, and that kind of gives you funky effects with the reaction diffusion. So from the start, I'm going to change the operation from multiply just to add, because it's the easiest to see. We're going to connect the feedback to the comp, and we're going to just drag the comp, not you. We're going to connect the image in to the comp, and we're just going to drag the comp and drop it on the feedback. And there you can already see, let me just make a null so I can use it for the output. we're already getting some like strange stuff going on. So for pulse, you check we've got some funkiness happening. So if we now play with the blur, you see it gets like a little bit thicker. So I think for the start we'll just have the blur on like 6 and the pre-shrink on 2, and then we reset this, and that's like a nice I want to say density for it. So now if we check in our comp and we go for like linear light, it goes on the inside now. So if I pulse the feedback, now we get it on the inside. From here, I'm just going to add on the outside of this a threshold and select a color. Let's go with, see what's got the nicest, green, maybe blue. Let's go with green. Green kind of has the most full. And you can play with the threshold and the soften. It's not really doing much, so we'll go with the lower threshold. And here I want to add another composite, and let's add a select, take our cutout. If we go to the select, you see where it says top, we can just drag and drop our cutout in there. So we select it just so it's a little bit neater. Drop that into the composite, and now we've got something going on. So now we can play and have funky things. So say here now, let's right click the wire and add another composite. Let's add a noise. Connect the noise to the composite. Hey, there we go. So now we've got something funky happening here. Go back to add. So you see now our reaction diffusion is getting affected. So let me just change the resolution of the noise to what our scene is. Obviously this is the non-commercial touch, so we're using 1280 by 720. And let's animate this noise ever so slightly. So in the z-axis of our noise transform, we'll go ABS time dot seconds divided by 5. See, so now our reaction diffusion has got a little bit going on. And if we play around with this blending mode, we get all different types of like funny, funky, let's reset that, interesting things going on with the reaction diffusion. So this is one of my most favorite things to do. Sorry. We're dying here. So what's cool about this is it's actually got alpha behind the reaction diffusion. So I'll look into that with you a little bit. Yeah, so what we can do here, I'm just going to add another comp because we can. No one tells us we're not allowed to. And we'll throw that back into it. And let's put this onto something like difference. So it just fucks around a little bit more with what's going on. Like I just enjoy it. Let's up our period on this. That. So this is one way to get like reaction diffusion doing something with your scene, you know. It's mostly just using the shape, but if we go and now we play with different blend modes, hey, you can see now we get all these different things going on, you know. Every time you can find something fun. Like, that's super weird. Let's go with multiply. So we want a little bit more of our stage image in this though. Let me just change this one back to add. So it keeps the general shape. So let's see, if I remove that, you see we're just, let's make it an inside so you can kind of see what's going on. You see we just have a white box. It's not actually basing it off of the internals of our stage. So let's add a comp in here. Let's take this up here. If you middle click with your mouse, you can select to like branch off from one of these things. I forget the name. So we're going to take that. Let's chuck that in the comp. So now the reaction diffusion works a little bit more of what we have input to it. So you'll see it's a little bit more conscious as to what's going on within the stage. And we can again play a little bit with what's happening here. Let's see with the threshold and the sharpen actually. So now let me actually put this in before the blur. That'll come out a lot better. There you go. So now our reaction diffusion is a little bit more based on our design. Let's give it a little bit more on the blur, play around with that a bit. Yeah, so we can change this. Let's play with the blend modes a bit. Find something that looks quite nice. That's a little bit too much. I think if we just stick with, it was multiply. Multiply looks good. Let's slow this noise down even more. Let's go divided by 10. And then we can just sharpen it up a little bit. Play with the harmonic gain. Let's see now if we play with this blend mode. Yeah, minimum's kind of cool. So where's our noise here? Let's just soften the noise a little bit more. So you see now we've got this like cool growth going on. If we put it on maximum. See, that's also quite cool. Now you'll have this, if we mask it, let's put this to multiply. So now we've got this super cool little patterning going on. So I'll walk through how we get to this point before I start to change it up a little bit more. So have our image input, we add our feedback. Before we do this, we can cut that out the process again. So oh, it's actually still kind of, oh, I haven't reset the feedback. No, it's kind of holding it to it. What have I done? Maximum. We're going with it. So for our feedback loop, we've got the movie file in of whatever stage design of our choice. We've got feedback, a blur, mine is set to 1 and 8. Pre-shrink, from what I understand, is like a pre-blur. And then the filter size. So the filter size determines, I like to think of it as the thickness of our diffusion. The lower the blur is, the less like smooth and bubbly the diffusion is going to be. The higher the blur is, the more smooth and bubbly the diffusion is. So I like to put mine on like a pre-shrink of 2, and then I generally sit at between 6 and 7, depending on the resolution you're running as well. Like if you're running a higher resolution, you'll probably fuck me. You'll probably need higher pre-shrink values and stuff, and filter sizes. Then sharpen. I always keep my sharpen and my dry wet at 1. If you drop the sharpen, so say, let me put this blur down quite a bit. If I lessen the sharpen, it'll do a similar effect to the blur. It like reduces the amount of reaction diffusion. If that makes, that's the only way I can kind of describe it lessens the diffusion, which I generally don't want. There are times, depending on how you've set up the reaction diffusion to run, that it is kind of useful, but I don't find it always is. And then we add a comp. Then in the bottom section of our feedback loop, you've got the movie file in. I like to add something like noise into it. If you want, you can also use a color ramp. If I set this to circular and put it in there, then as the phase goes, let's just fix the resolution. As the phase goes, you'll see the reaction diffusion come. So if I animate this, it's just ABS, again, time dot seconds divided by 5. You'll see now the reaction diffusion comes in. So there's a few different ways. I kind of think of this as a mask. You can see if we can run them both at the same time, it does strange things. So that's kind of just like your piece to make it a little bit more modular. And then if you think about it, as long as the image coming into the feedback is static or around the start, if I don't have anything in this top section that's making it move, the reaction diffusion's generally not going to be very animated, because it's going to keep diffusing off of the same spots. So if I put like a noise over this input, the reaction diffusion will be different every time, because it will keep building off of that noise, which we can do like in the experimental stuff after the basic scene. I'll show you a bit of that. So this in this exact one, I've got this set to freeze. I believe it does also work if you're using other options that like minimum it works. I find freeze to just work the best. It kind of has this growing effect to it. Another one I think was stencil luminescence. One of these, linear light. Yeah, linear light also works quite well. But yeah, for this case, I'm going to leave it on freeze because I like how it looks. And then the comp that's running off of the feedback. So you'll see there's our little dotted line after we do the drag and drop. This comp I've got on maximum. It will also work quite well on minimum. I can't woo, I can't tell you exactly what they mean or do. I know minimum is the opposite of maximum. So like minimum, it'll be small lines, and where it's big is gone, and maximum, it's thick, and where it's big is small lines. But this will also look kind of cool with freeze. It'll look kind of cool on the exclude. So it depends on if you want like this kind of patterning. I'm not a huge fan of it, but you know, it works. Like a lot of these will give you a lot of fun. So my biggest thing is just like experiment with it and play. Screen actually looks pretty cool. We can even leave it on that. Maybe we'll put it on minimum for this next part, but you know, the maximum, it also works really well. Maybe even screen. We'll leave it on screen. So, and then the threshold. So the main thing is, I like to just have one. The threshold means I can select just one of those colors. So you'll see if we take it away, we've got red, green, and blue there. So the green on this seems to be more, but we can change it to red, we can change it to blue, we can have it run on the luminance. I just feel like there's a bit of an overlap when you do that. It just looks cleaner if you have it on one specific color. And then you don't have to use it as a mask. Like, you can also set this to inside. I like to kind of see how it'll look over the decor, so I prefer to put this onto multiply. And yeah, now for some like cool post processing. Let's see. So here we've got one portion of the reaction diffusion there. We've got the noise. So what we can maybe do, let's select this with middle mouse, click, go null, drag it out. So I've been selecting a lot from within my feedback loop recently to kind of get funky effects. So like now we've got an edge running on there. And now if I go comp, we can add that, and now you get like a funky style or whatever. The maximum looks quite cool, because now instead of getting the entire feedback loop, we're actually just getting this portion of it. So like if I was to now go and freak out the loop a little bit, and let's add that into there, now this section's got some funk going on, and now the reaction diffusion's even more different. Let's just put something random in. Let's take that away. Oh, I'm dying. Maybe we go with let's change this to multiply. Or difference now. Let's see, now this has got something weird going on. Let's get rid of that. We want you and you. So there's our diffusion. What can we do in here? Let's find a fun mode. Let's go with the minimum. And now let's take from this guy, add it, let's go with another threshold. And then an edge. Drop the sample step all the way down. So sample step, my easiest way to describe it is like the thickness of our lines. Let's just add a comp again, so I can use this as the mask. And let's just select inside. And now, my favorite part is adding a bloom. So we'll keep this comp here. Let's add a bloom filter, or bloom tox. Let's just hit the blue button to make it your active viewer. So we're going to take that off. Now we've got the bloom as the active. Let's find somewhere that we like. So I just kind of mess around with things until I see something that I'm like, oh, that looks nice, and then I like put all my energy into it. So now we get some funkiness going on there. If I take the edge off, I wonder what it might look like. Yeah, that's better without the edge. So now here's my favorite part. We're going to add an HSV to RGB. We're going to add an HSV adjust. Ramp up the value. And let's add that back into our scene here. So now we've got this kind of funky added post processing to our, let's make this an over. or ooh. See, like this is the beauty of the like experimenting. When you like you're not sure what it's gonna make. But like this is stunning. If we up the value, up the saturation. Now we've got this awesome reaction diffusion scene. There, like you've just made something that's realistically super simple, and we've gone and just leveled it up that extra bit. We can maybe drop some of that, maybe just before the bloom. Let's take the edge away. Just before the bloom, let's add a blur. That'll kind of help with the like, if you see we're getting kind of like some fuzz, we don't want that. We want it to look nice and clean. So now you've got this epic reaction diffusion that'll run off of whatever you feed it, and you can play around with, you know, a lot of little attributes here to kind of get some different things going. You can fuck with it in your live shows, MIDI map some of this, and it's mapped to your decor. Like, it's super simple, and by playing with different pieces here, you'll get all these different versions of it. You know, you could save these to different pieces. Let's just undo and go back to where we were. You can like apply this to different areas of your scene, have a couple switches set up, save these as components, and in your set you can just swap between them. And obviously here we can change the colors with the HSV adjust. So let me run through the experimenting section that we've just done. So before we made this, our reaction diffusion, which went up to the threshold. Yeah, so here's where the diffusion ended before. At this comp, went into the threshold, went into our output. Now what we do is we take a portion. We probably could use from here. Let's see if it makes a difference. Yeah, we want to go from the inside. So let me drag this up so we don't get confused. Hey. So this is where our diffusion ended. What we did is our comp, we set it to minimum. That's reacting off of the feedback. From there, we took the sharpen within the feedback loop. This sharpen after the blur. We took the sharpen, put a null from it. The null is just easier to middle click and go null. Now we know this is the start of the next piece. We used the threshold with the same. I just duplicated this threshold that we used here, so the effects, the settings are the same. You could change this to like red. So now the thresholds, the bloom is reacting off of a different section of the reaction diffusion that we were using. So another idea there. But anyway, we copy and pasted the threshold, connected this to it. From the threshold, we go to a comp. I use inside just so that we know we're not working with all of this extra diffusion around. We just want to be working with what's inside our piece. Then we give it a little bit of a blur. We add a bloom. So I don't really know the bloom effects that well. I'll give you the rundown that I know. The min bloom radius is quite easy. It's the minimum radius of our bloom. I like to have the minimum down to 0 and using like a low amount on the max so that it's kind of more controlled. The bloom threshold is obviously the threshold of the bloom. Keeping this at like in near the middle, like between 0.1 and 0.2. But yeah, I'd say above 0. The most I'll go to is between 0.1 and 0.2. Bloom fill is like how much of it is like the thickness of the bloom. So the thresholds, the thresholds where the bloom is being selected. The radius is obviously the radius of the bloom, and the full is kind of like the density of it within that. The intensity as well, I would think of, is like the brightness of your bloom. HSV to RGB, there's no color in this, so we want to give it color. So that's what I use this for. And then an HSV adjust. The value multiplier is quite easy. It's the amount of value. The saturation is obviously the saturation. Higher is going to be like more, I find it distorts more color. I like to keep it almost pastel, so like between 0.5 and 1.1 is a good place. And then the hue offset's just the changing of the color. It's offsetting the hue. And then I just add these together. We're using a maximum here, but again, this is something that you can play around with, find fun that works. You know, like a difference will look kind of funky. Maximum just seems to work the best on this one, and that's where we exit it. So yeah, this will look sick. I can guarantee you already. It's not that much effort. It's just 2 small sections, one that does a little bit of post-processing, and the one that makes up your feedback loop. And this is just like genuinely one of the most integral parts of anything I map, is reaction diffusion. So like if we just chuck a different stage in here, let's go with the STP. Let me just reset the feedback. So there you go. Different stage instantly does its job. And here, like, you'll want to play around with this. So there's with less blur, more blur, a lot of blur. You know, you can kind of really see what it's doing here. So a lot you can play with, you know. You can have a reaction diffusion running separate to this one that's affecting the inside of it. There's a lot you can do. For another instance, if I go in here, and so here's my reaction diffusion. Let's just move this away. In the reaction diffusion, if I add a circle and a transform, set this to 1280 by 720, and output, we want to output to the resolution. Let's just increase the scale. So if I now take this and that circle, let's just soften it a bit. If I take this, add a comp, let's do it before the blur, add a comp, make it multiply, put my circle in, let's add another one here, a comp, put my circle in. Let's see if this will work off the bat without any. We went the wrong way. Let's go. You can see now I've got control over where the reaction diffusion is being shown. You know, so that's too fast, but you get the idea. Like, this will now control some of the reaction diffusion. I'm not going to go into like mapping my mouse with it, but you get the better picture. Let me change the input image again here. I'm trying not to be all over the place, bear with me. Let's reset the feedback. There you go. So now if we go down and left, you see I'm just increasing the scale of this, but you can see how moving this sphere will, obviously with the mouse it's a lot smoother and whatnot. Moving the sphere will affect the diffusion. So you can add outside entities to it, and it'll go ahead and do its own thing. But yeah, I think I'm gonna leave this this tutorial for now where it is. I feel like it's a good starting point. I do hope that it was somewhat usable, and you could learn something. I hope the way that I explained it. You know, we've got two separate parts: the reaction diffusion and the post-processing. And you know what? It looks alright if you're not using any post-processing. Like, it'll work. It'll look good. You know, it's just a matter of if you wanted to have that little bit extra oomph on the stage. You want to just give it something a little bit nicer. That and you know, playing with this, you'll get different effects out of everything. So play around. That's the biggest thing with this. You know, the only way you can figure out funky things is by experimenting, and no way is the right or wrong way, especially when it comes to this. However it works for you is how it works for you, and this is how it works for me, and the way that I describe it to myself. So yeah, I'm gonna have that other one up in the Patreon, and yeah, this video should be up there first, and then we'll yeah, if you have any questions, you can feel free to drop me a message, drop a comment, subscribe, you know, do what you need to do.